Welcome to Bening Podcast in the episode of Driving Humanity Forward and the Green Paradox. So today is our third episode and our presenter and conversation is Pak Eko and Pak Kostup. And I think today will be a very interesting discussion. So please start, Pak Eko.
All right, Pak Eka, Pak Kostup, nice to meet you again in this series. So this is our third session.
Likewise, Pak Eko.
Right, so let me come to my side. Okay, previously we discussed about the green gas topic, and as well as the complexity of the engine itself, whether how complex is the ICE engine comparing to the EVs, and there's another complexity that we need to take a look now, which I call it another side of complexity. There's a complexity that will link to social and economic impact. So if you take a look at an EV battery itself, we start with the battery first. So the battery pack is like this. When you open the battery pack itself, it will look like something like this. There are a lot of cells, and there are other components that form this battery. Yeah, and with this complexity of this battery itself, the size is about a whole floor of the car. So if you can imagine with this, what will be the complexity that come with it. We talk about the energy that we use to produce it, to produce the EV, to produce the battery, and most of the energy that used to produce EV itself is more on the battery production. And with that, actually, I would like to bring about first is the source of the battery material itself. So how the battery material is being sourced. The main battery now is based on lithium, and the other one is with nickel. There's a new category which is based on salt water. We'll talk about that later. But if we take a look at the two main battery material source, it all comes from mining. And normally mining, we can see there will be a lot of impact on environment. So it's either the environment around that will be damaged. There's another effect of the people around that area. So we need someone who knows about this environment to discuss further on this topic. And on the other side, I'd like to bring about the recyclability of the battery itself. Currently, with the current technology that we have, we don't talk about EV yet. Let's see about the daily equipment that we use, like a torch lamp, a bicycle lamp, or any small equipment like savers, even our handphones. Those are using batteries. And we already have this problem with those small batteries, how to recycle it and how to dispose it. It's already a problem. So with this size of batteries, over the years, over the lifetime of the car itself, probably after 10 years or slightly more than 10 years, what can we do with that? Luckily, came across some companies that already have a plan for that. For example, one of it is Volkswagen Group. They have this plan whereby uh, they have two ways of reusing the battery on the end of life. So it's either reuse it for some other purpose or repurpose it. It can be also reusing it. And if it's not reusable anymore, then it goes to recycle, whereby all the material will be separated and reused independently, which is a kind of a good initiative. And I believe most of the OEM has these ideas on how to do. It's just that how to realize it, we need to know from the OEM side as well. Now, let's take a look of the minerals, the battery, and the producers of the battery. So if you talk about EV batteries, we need to see who are the players, the main players. Also, three big player here. The main player of a battery for EVs, CATL, and then LG and Panasonic. So these three companies are the main suppliers to the major EV producer currently. There are a lot more producer in this world, and if you look at the map, these two map, yeah. So the first one is about lithium producer. So which country actually having lithium reserve? These are the distribution around the world. And for nickel, these are the distribution around the world. So there are differences of concentration. Some, for example, like lithium here more on Australia, and even South America also have a lot. On the other hand, for nickel, concentrated mainly in Indonesia and Philippines. Yeah. So this will also had an impact on economic perspective. So depends on which technology that will be more prominent. So those battery technology which will be used more, be it a lithium battery or maybe a nickel-based battery, or even probably the one that CATL recently announced about uh, saltwater based battery. So we need to see further how or where this new technology will proceed. Yeah. There are other technologies that are also available, but these are the two main battery technology. Now, after battery, we also need to take a look at the engine itself and what or any other components are related to engine and how complex is the impact outside of the engine itself. Yeah. So remember on the second discussion, we discussed about moving from this complex ICE engine into this simple electric engine. With this change, there will be also direct impact on the social and economic. We can see first, how about the OEM ICE plant? So definitely the plant that produced this engine will have an impact. How to convert it to a plant that can produce this electric motor. Yeah. So how about this plant? You understand that all OEM normally produce the engine by themselves. Um, it's a huge investment. Yeah. So a lot of investment in not in only one country, that in a lot of countries. One brand even or one OEM even produce in multiple countries. So there are a lot of plant that will be impacted with the shifting from ICE to EVs. Another area whereby related to this shift is that the engine itself consists of a lot of other components that produced by other companies, by their suppliers. So you can take an example like an exhaust manifold and the exhaust itself, the belt, the radiator, carburetor or injector, or all those are produced by other companies. So there will be a lot of supplier business that will be affected by this change. So what about this company? What about this company? What will happen to them? What will happen to their people? What will happen to the employees of these companies? Yeah. So I think we can relate to the second podcast where we discuss about the news from or the statement from President Toyota. So he mentioned about this shift if we do it carelessly or it's going to have a big impact on employment and so on. So it really a concern that need to address as well. Yeah. So with that, I think we can go to the topics that we can start to discuss for today. First of all, is this what is the biggest impact on the EV battery production? So the battery production itself, what will be the biggest impact? We discuss about the emission that being produced to produce the battery. Then how about the mining that will supply the material, and what will happen to those factories that I just mentioned just now, that if we need to convert from ICE engine to electric motor, how those ICE plant will be converted, and what about their suppliers? Yeah. So all this adaptation, we know that it has an economic and society impact. So does this answer our previous question, whereby we asked why the world can just jump into the EV trend? There are a lot of other consideration behind that. It's not as simple as switching cars. Okay, Pa. So that's what I can present today. Maybe we can start to discuss.
Sure, Pa. Thanks a lot, Pa Eko, for the wonderful insights. Pa Eka, you wanted to say something before we start answering the questions?
Okay,
Or
Paiko,
have a conversation? Yeah.
can you return back to your comparison picture? Yeah.
This one or
Yeah.
previous one? Okay.
Only the ICE engine and the EV. Can you just previous where you have only two photos about the ICE engine and the EV?
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Okay.
No.
This one, yeah. All right.
Yeah, this one, yeah.
Mm.
So this picture, I'm sorry, I have to say something about this picture. So this picture is above is ICE engine, right, Paiko?
Correct, Pa.
Whereas actually in ICE engine, there is a second subsystem that is a power transmission, right?
Yes, there should be a transmission that need
okay.
to connect to the engine, but yes.
Yeah. So
but
engine,
here, this is the transmission. Yeah.
Yeah, that is my point. So engine produce the power then gets transferred to the wheel. That is another subsystem. And so in ICE car, there is a engine and there's power transmission. But in EV, those two become one, like your picture below, right?
Correct, Pa. Although this one, yeah, we can dismantle it, become its own system.
Yeah.
Basically, what I'm trying to say in EV is not just reduction of a part, but also reduction of two system, engine and power transmission, become only one. Engine
Yeah, you can
and
say that one. Yeah.
power transmission within. So this is just to make a more clear picture to the viewers and listeners here, how big the impact is actually. So don't think only about the engine, but there is another side. And
Yeah.
if you can go advanced, yes,
This
one
one?
more,
Or
to
further?
supplier. Yeah.
Yeah.
So supplier also include supplier in the power transmission side. It's,
Exactly. Yeah.
so exhaust system, power transmission system,
Correct. Cooling
and
system.
cooling system.
Yeah.
So
Motor, stator. A lot of things
yeah,
actually. But yeah.
yes. So this is just to emphasize on what Paiko said, that actually this is not as simple as
Yeah.
moving from ICE to EV.
True.
There is
Yeah. But
a
just
lot
not,
of things.
yeah, Paika. If we just don't limit to the component side, but if you see from a vehicle perspective also, how exactly you control an engine and deliver the power to the wheels, with the power and the torque to the wheels, there are many things which goes. Say, for example, the behavior of the vehicle. Let's say, like if engines are overheating, how the engine should behave, or what could be the indications which could go back to the vehicle, and many control parameters which goes in the detailing of the vehicle, right? Which is basically we as a rider come to know only as, say, how good the ride is, how comfortable the ride is, and that's a lot of engineering which goes. In case of motors, though it is simplified, but the control aspects are also very complex, because it's only one thing which you need to control, that's the motor. And then to control the motor you need a controller, and then that
Correct.
controller needs to talk to, say, a vehicle control unit, and that also needs to interact with the battery management system. So it's more and more complex in terms of the algorithms or the architectures and the various control points. So it may look simple on the design side, or at the aesthetic or the appearance side of it, but when we look into the architectures and the various control it needs to do, and the hardware which gets involved, is considerably complex. So that's another perspective about when we talk about a technicality, or the engineering perspective of replacing an ICE with uh, say a electric motor or a traction motor which would be replacing, right? So it's quite
True. But
interesting. Yeah, it's quite interesting, and there is no straight answer. There's no straight yes, there's straight no. And for IC engines, it has been a journey of over 100 years, where
yes.
uh, the research, the feedbacks of various customer behaviors, the driving patterns have been incorporated and come to a certain level, which is today. While for EV, there is a base available in terms of the driving cycles or the customer preference, or things like that. However, how the vehicle would actually behave is something which we would need, or we would need to see as things evolve or shape up. So right now, if you really see, say for a commercial vehicle perspective, almost all have done some protos, or there are some advanced trials, but not a true case which could be benchmarked as, okay, this is something which is already in mass production, we have sold uh, n number of units, and this should be a good to go kind of a product in the market. So that's still a evolving phase, and that would going to take time, right? But I would like to bring the attention which Pa Echo brought as a point in the first slide, where he talked about the various materials and minerals which would go in making of the battery. And now, if we see our main topic, which is the green paradox, which is related to the climate change, uh, right? If you remember in my presentation, I had shared one slide which detailed about the IPCC's parameters which they want to control, right? And one of the parameters which was not faring as per the given targets for 2030 and 2050 was the afforestation, which meant afforestation, which meant that to have the climates under control or the temperatures under control, we need to have increased land mass, which is going greener, means we plant more trees, and which is not immediate, but over a period, once we nurture those trees, would be able to absorb a level of carbon dioxide and emit oxygen, right? So, and reducing the carbon footprint. However, as for EVs, if there is an increased demand of new minerals and new materials, so definitely the land mass which is currently, say, under the forest cover would need a deforestation, would need the removal and all. So which impact is currently maybe not assessed. Furthermore, as Paiko rightly hinted, the small batteries are still a cause of concern. We don't know how to dispose them. We cannot segregate those. We cannot know how to do that, or at max it goes as a landfill, or it is dumped deep in the sea, spoiling or creating a pollution and further carbon footprints in these areas. So bigger the battery size and larger the battery sizes as it would go in the EV space, we don't know how much more carbon we would be adding to the landmass and the sea. So really a recycling and its impact on the carbon has to be assessed first. And when a EV is being launched, we need to equally make sure that there is something available at site which could be used for disposal or recycling this material, so that there is not again a further load onto the requirement of minerals as well as extraction of or creating of new capacities or facilities. So that's something which will have to be held at an equilibrium, so that there will be considerable balance. While one side the EV will reduce a carbon content from the emission side, however the increased need of minerals would maybe negate that effect, considering like more carbon is being released in the atmosphere from these activities, right? So maybe I leave it to Paiko and Paika about for their thoughts on this.
Yeah.
And
so yes, Falkaustup. So very well said. So I still remember your presentation before. So that's why when I saw these pictures, and when we try to find any pictures of mining site, these are the pictures that we always see. We don't see any mining site that has greeneries around it. Yeah, that it's very rare that we have mining that has greeneries around it, and that really struck me where linking to what Pak Kaustup has presented before, that um, the first is that we need to increase the greeneries. There's the ideas that to produce more oxygens, and then this forest will also help us to absorb the COs and so on. Whereby when we produce EVs and we use EVs, yes, we help on the reducing emission from changing from burning gasoline to using of EVs. We reduce that, but in the process of having EVs on our hands, the production of that vehicle itself, the production of its batteries requires all this, whereby the impact to the environment will be substantial. Yeah. So it's really back to the question on the first session that we have. We are trying to solve now the 12% of climate change, but then the other percentage, whereby the industries and then deforestation, that it could become even bigger. Yeah. So with that, really agree with you, Pa Kauso. So maybe we already have some ideas why or what are the challenges on battery production itself. It's not only the challenge of making it, but
Right.
as well as the challenge along the process that we need to think about that.
So,
Yeah,
Paiko, can you go
I
to the
completely agree.
topics?
So
Yes, Paika, which slides that?
The slide of your topic. Continue until the end. The topics that
topics
you
for
want.
today's discussion, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe the questions which we want to discuss today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we more or less discuss about the battery production, what is the impact, and of course, and the concern from what Pak Kostop has mentioned about the mining, the and extraction of that material will have a negative impact instead of having a positive impact on the climate change. Any thought on that, Paika?
Maybe Pakosup, you want to?
Yeah, see, as we are seeing it, EV batteries is a new thing. So newer chemistries would arise, newer requirement would come in. So it is going to take some time, as we discussed in our previous two episodes as well. Like currently, there's a lot of turmoil, so things have to settle in a bit so that we will have a better clarity going forward. So right now, everybody is trying to do many things. So really tough time to actually predict how the green the future would be. But only word of caution which I would like to exercise is that while we have intent to go green, let's not damage further. We do a proper assessment about what its impact is going to be and the various phases of its life cycle. Right.
Of course, Pak. Yeah. Then today we also discuss about the impact on the process of production itself. What about the plant that producing the ICs and its component suppliers that will be impacted by the reduction of volume? Yeah. If let's say
Yeah.
we don't say it becomes zero yet, but the volume of total passenger vehicle will not be increasing so much. So
Yeah.
if a EV volume will increase, definitely the ICE volume will reduce. So this part of reduction will have an impact on a certain plant and as well as suppliers. Yeah.
But here, if we see the overall aspect by Echo, say if we limit our focus to the developing countries or the growth economies, say let's say like Vietnam, Philippines, or say Indonesia, India, where there is a rising young population. So the requirement for the vehicles, the passenger vehicles or the two-wheelers, is poised to grow over years. It's not that something that it is going to drop down. So now we have two problems at hand. One is what happens to the fleet or the vehicles which are already available on the road. Second is when more and more EVs are coming into picture, how do we have an ecosystem which supports both during the transition? Let's say like there's a requirement to support the EVs and there's a requirement to support the ICEs.
Right.
So there's a burden about both because some of the things would be creating a similar effect. It may not be limited directly with the volume, but it would be on the activity side itself. So still that would be contributing on the carbon footprint. So that's again an interesting point about how the ecosystem supports on the both aspects or the coexistence part for EVs and ICs. But equally important point which brings to my attention is about, you rightly said, like what happens to the ICE suppliers, what happens to the ICE capacities or the facilities, because that's not something which is being used as is to produce the traction motors or the prime mover in the EV perspective.
Mm.
And that would be mostly done maybe not by the OEMs, but by some suppliers who have the expertise in designing the motors. So
Right.
there are two things which would be happening. One is on the capacity side, let's say, like as the passenger vehicle with ICE starts decreasing trend, then
Mm-hmm.
slowly the OEMs would like to give away or write off the capacities or the assets which are hold for. Okay, that creates a, what you can say, an available area where the expansion could happen. So not directly impacting the forest or other lands which could be used, but they reuse it. But if that is not the case, but to create an EV, if a new factory is to be built, then we are again at the same situation back there, right?
Mm.
And similarly for EVs, as new and new industries are coming up, new and new startups are entering in this phase, surely for sure there will be an increased requirement of more land areas and new capacities and new facilities, which again brings back to the point from the IPCC metric of deforestation. So I really don't know. Today also we are not in line or the trend where it should be. We still have a negative trend for that, and
Mm.
with the actions what we are taking, it will just amplify the negative trend. So that is again something which we need to really look into, how we can innovate or maybe apply a theory of constraints, as Dr. Goldratt had taught in the famous topic of theory of constraints, and see
Mm-hmm.
how do we optimize our constraints and have an optimum solution at hand, so that
Mm.
let's not damage further, but see what we can do, what we have from what we have, and still make a better impact.
Yeah. But Costa, you bring one interesting topic whereby um, if this change is done within the OEM itself, then the amount of land or area that's available could be reused. Yeah. So we will not do a further damage on acquisition of forest or any other land for production. But interestingly, uh, the EV producer that are currently, uh, I can say, the biggest in the market,
Mhm.
Tesla. They are
Yeah,
previously not a car maker. Yeah.
yeah,
So and a lot more now. There are a lot more companies, as you mentioned, the startup, and there are smaller company in China that are they are focusing on making EVs. They were not any car maker before. So
right,
definitely there will be a, definitely now it's not going to be, but it's already an additional land that is being acquired to produce all this. Yeah.
right.
Okay.
True, true. So there are various topics in this, actually. One
Mm-hmm.
is what happens to the people who are working in these companies which are producing ICEs.
Mm.
What happens to the capacities, assets, and facilities?
Mm.
So whether the people who are working, they just furloughed or let them go, or they are retrained for the EV skills,
Mm-hmm.
because that's also a domino effect in one aspect. Let's say, like, because so many people just losing out the jobs because no more the ICs are produced, then it's not a happy state for any country, any economy, because that
Mm-hmm.
increases the unemployability by leaps and bounds.
Mm-hmm.
So are we taking the right steps, maybe from an academia side where the young population is being taught about the new age technologies, whether the right skills are being imparted? Then are we taking the right, or the organizations are taking the cognizance that people who are working on these ICE techniques are being reskilled with the techniques and the skills which would be required for, say, producing an EV? So there are many questions which we need to ask, and but just not limit to asking the questions, but also make a roadmap and an action plan
Mm.
wherein we have a mutual win-win, right? And everybody benefits.
Right, Pak. So that's how Paika we will go into the next topics then, which will need not only engineers to take a look in on this area. We need a lot of people, as we mentioned many times, that uh, it takes a lot of, or it takes a village to do this. Yeah, the whole, we all in this together, and uh, we cannot solve by one solving by doing one thing only. We need to do a lot of things that link with each other. Yeah.
True.
Yeah,
Maybe I can just give a maybe a synonym or a analogy. We all face the impact of corona. There's no
Right.
person on this earth who can say that I have not been touched or I am not impacted. It is not
Mm,
possible. It started as with one person with the story, let's say like he had a bat in at his dinner and then the entire world had the corona, right? So that's the story which goes. But we need to have a similar kind of movement where we start taking the right steps. It's maybe it may seem weird, but one individual is taking one step forward, but if the entire community, entire nation, entire globe takes the same step, one step forward, then we have multiple steps already in this initiative. The point is, we have to be aligned, we have to be, and we need that kind of a leader who would be guiding in this really, really interesting and, you know, uh, turbulent time, and be a light guide to have the right step taken to create this as a movement. So it's, as Paiko rightly said, it's not a matter of only one person or two persons or three persons or engineers limited, but the entire ecosystem who has to contribute and in
mm,
aligning and taking the desired right step.
yeah. And we have to synchronize all this that won't move together.
Yeah.
Okay,
okay.
Paika, you have
Okay,
anything?
Michael, yeah,
Mhm.
before closing, I just want to say, actually, your suggestion of the key topics to discuss is very difficult uh, to discuss, and even more difficult to get the answer, because now we know that if we concentrate on EV only, there is possibility of deforestation, and if we concentrate on ICE and EV without collaboration between them, there is a new use of the land, and there will be a overcapacity or unused capacity in the ICE side. So again, this comes, to my understanding, comes to the second episode, that we say our conclusion is actually we need to coexist. And
Mhm.
in this case, this message is again being strengthened, and in a more urgent way, in a more urgent tone, that you cannot do it alone. Because now, if our current thinking is that we produce EV for EV's sake, for having EV, there is a, we can estimate what will happen. We will not go forward, but maybe we will regress in our final aim of saving this planet and saving humanity, or driving humanity forward. I think this is the conclusion of our today discussion. So any additional thought, Pak Kostup or Pak Eko?
I second you, Paika. So this is more becoming more and more urgent, and before it becomes critical and there are limited options, we need to put our thoughts together and align, collaborate, co-create, and coexist.
Pak
Yeah.
Eko?
Well said, Pak Kaustup. Yeah. So we need to do, we need to do it together. It's an urgent thing. It's not something that will come 10 or 20 years later. So we need to do it now, and we need to do it together with all the other discipline that involved in it.
True.
Yes, agree. So, okay, with this, thank you very much, Faiko, for your presentation, and Pak also for your comment and for your insight and steering this conversation to give that final conclusion. Anyway, it is more becoming urgent that everybody collaborate for our coexistence. Then I will close this episode and see you in the next episode. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Pa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paika. Thank you, Paiko.
Thank you, Pak
Looking
Kosto.
forward
Thank you, Pak
Paiko.
Kosto. Thank you, Baika.